to the Bella Grayce podcast, where we are empowering you to embrace the beautiful grace found in recovering your authentic self. And this season, we are doing that by sharing stories of people who are in recovery and who are having fun living a sober lifestyle. And today we have my friend Amanda. Say hello.
Hi.
Yes. So Amanda and I met on Instagram. Yep. And so we have exchanged messages, and we did yoga in the park this morning, and now here we are.
Yeah.
All right. So you actually teach yoga, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that you reached out to me for this podcast just a few days ago.
Yeah.
And I live like an hour and a half from here. And so the fact that I was already doing the Clyde Warren Park yoga, I was like, this is just meant to be.
It really was. I was looking for, because I have a few slots open, and I have a lady in my neighborhood that I'm going to interview, but I'm not doing hers until next week. And I was like, well, I have spots. Like, I'll just reach out to some people. And I was truly expecting you to be like, yeah, I can do it like next month or something. You're like, I'll be in town this weekend. I'm like, yes.
Winning. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was perfect. Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us your story and how you got to where you are today. And by the way, I love your shirt.
Namaste sober.
Yes.
Thank you. So I'll just tell you a little bit about my childhood and then when substance abuse came into the picture.
Yeah.
So I was raised by my grandma. She's fantastic.
Yeah.
We've always been really close. She has dementia now, so that's really hard.
Yeah.
I met my biological mom when I was 11. So we've had like a very rocky relationship.
Wow.
Even like to this day, it's one of those, it's kind of like an addiction.
Yeah.
Because I know that the relationship is not healthy for me. And it's not that she doesn't have any kind of like alcohol or drug addiction. It's just that some relationships are just not good for you.
Yeah.
And that's one of them. So, it's definitely hard to let go of that relationship, but it's definitely something that I have to do. And it's hard because she is a grandma to my kids. So
Yeah. Is she close to your kids?
she's closer to my kids than she is to me.
Okay. Yeah.
So she comes to some of their games. She's a good Nana.
Yeah.
So, which makes it harder.
And that's what I was going to say. Does that make it harder for you?
Yeah, because they don't have any bad blood with her like I do.
Yeah.
So that definitely, I'm not going to be the bad guy and like say, you can't come to the game. So it's just something I tolerate until my kids are old enough. And I haven't always felt like that. I used to think like eventually God is going to make a way for this relationship to work. And I think in my sobriety, I've realized that when it's like insanity when you keep repeating the same thing over and over, expecting different results. And that can be applied to alcohol, drugs, relationships. And that is exactly what the relationship causes pain for her and me. Yeah. And it's not that either of us are bad people. We just have too much.
There's a lot of baggage there.
Yeah, a lot of baggage.
Yeah.
So, I was a fairly good girl, really good girl in elementary school, middle school, had a really good time. I've always said middle school was like my favorite part of school. I had a blast. And I played volleyball. That was definitely my thing. Went to the movies like every weekend, met up with friends, that kind of thing. I just had so much fun in middle school. And freshman year, I was still playing volleyball, and there was a girl that moved to my town, or where I went to high school, and I just became friends with her, went to her house one weekend, and it was like a whole new life. She was into, like, I would have never dreamt of stealing anything. That weekend, we went to Old Navy, we, like, stole bikinis, and, like, it was just stupid stuff, like, I probably had money in my purse or my pocket, but it was just like this thrill of doing something because I had always been so sheltered. And then here I was spending the weekend with this girl who had no rules. Like her mom had, I think, a pill addiction, and she was like passed out in her room all the time. And so she just had all this freedom. And so at that point I started I'm sure I smoked pot that weekend.
Yeah.
I probably did cocaine that weekend.
Wow. You went from 0
Yeah.
to 100.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that went on for years. Like,
Oh
it
my
would be like,
gosh.
luckily, it was a weekend thing because it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
You know, it could have been I like did it and got addicted and it was just like a daily thing.
Yeah.
Luckily, it was just something we did. Like, you know, people go to a football game on a Friday
Mhm.
night. We did cocaine and went to a football game on a Friday night.
Yeah.
So we did that for years and had a lot of fun with her. She just was it. I mean, I don't know what she's like now. I haven't talked to her in years, but just super fun. She was the type of person that, like, no matter what kind of environment we were in, like, we could go into like a ghetto part of town
Mhm.
and she would just fit in with those people.
Yeah.
And like everywhere we were, it was kind of like she kind of became this new person.
Yeah. She was a chameleon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, I just loved her and I still love her, honestly.
Yeah.
But
We share a special bond with those people.
yeah, it's like a trauma bond,
Mhm.
probably.
Yep.
Probably my senior year. At that point, I had switched to go to another high school because my parents had found out I was doing cocaine.
Oh, yeah.
Or my grandma found out. My dad, my biological mom knew. Actually went to rehab. And I was in trouble with truancy court.
Mm-hmm.
And I came back. And at that point, I remember she and this guy picked me up from my grandma's house one night. And I was thinking, you know, we were going to go do the same things we always do. We would probably do coke, maybe smoke some pot. I don't know. But I wasn't into alcohol at the time.
Yeah.
I was really digging the drug scene.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know why.
Yeah, I shared that with you about my own story, and
Yeah.
it was kind of the same thing for me. I didn't really drink in high school. I had one bad experience with alcohol, and then it just wasn't for me, and then I got introduced to drugs.
Yeah.
And that was my jam.
Isn't that so crazy? And I
Yeah.
think for the first time in that drug crowd, I felt like because growing up with my grandma was great. I
Mhm.
never want to discredit that because I love her with all my heart and she was such a good mom.
Yeah.
However, my childhood, like, you know, having a grandma and then a dad and a biological mom and then just the struggle of, you know, can't call your mom around your you know, it was just,
Yeah.
it
so
was
was it your mom, your dad's mom that
Mhm.
raised you?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you knew your dad,
Yeah.
but your grandma was raising you.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay.
So my dad also, he never like said he had an addiction, but my understanding is he did a lot of cocaine also when he was
Mhm.
younger. And then so Whitney, a friend, I don't
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
to dish out names, but
Yeah.
it could be any Whitney.
Yeah.
She picked me up with this guy from my grandma's house. I think I was a senior, maybe a junior in high school, and she had a new drug with her.
Oh.
It was meth.
Yeah.
I don't think she even called it that weekend.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have known what it was at the time, or I don't remember. I don't know. Even though I had done all these drugs, like I was still very innocent minded.
Yeah.
Like I was like, that would never happen to me
Mhm.
mentality.
You and I are very similar in that regard. Like I had a very sheltered upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
I was exposed to certain things because after my dad passed away, he passed away when I was 8. I had to go live with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom's family was completely different than my dad's family. And my cousins lived in the hood.
Yeah.
And they were smoking weed and drinking and, running around with the gangs. And, it was just that lifestyle. So I was exposed to it. But I was the good girl. Like, my aunt would be like, hey, you can't go in that room right now because they're smoking.
Yeah.
And so I would be, forced to sit outside the room because I was the good girl.
Yeah.
That they were trying to protect, right? And
Right.
then I met my crazy friend.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the same thing. Her parents, they're hippies. They're my second parents. I love them. Her dad calls me his bonus daughter. To this day, we're still best friends. But, it was the same thing. They were stoned out of their minds 90% of the time because they smoked weed like it was cigarettes. And so it wasn't we had no parental supervision
Yeah.
at all.
Which was great at the time.
I
right?
know, yeah.
It was free woman.
Yeah.
You're a free teenage girl.
Yeah. And the first time I tried meth, didn't know what it was. My friend was just like, here, smoke this.
You're going to love this.
You're going to love it. Yeah.
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 And I think when I did try meth that weekend, it's so weird to even say that I did that. Like, the very thought of that just, like, sends chills down my spine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so disgusting to me.
Yeah. It is a gross drug.
Yeah, I did like it a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was instantly addicted, but nonetheless, for the next... So I was 17 when I graduated high school. So from 17 to 19, when I got pregnant with my son, I smoked meth. And during that process, so the guy that was with the girl that picked me up from my grandma's house that night became my boyfriend. It wasn't like he wasn't a great boyfriend.
Yeah.
He probably had other girlfriends, but I was like, he was it for me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was the drugs. I mean, because he was the drug dealer.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that was it, or like if I still question, like, were they genuine feelings that I had for him?
Yeah.
Or was it all the drugs? So we ended up getting pregnant with my oldest son, Miles.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as I found out, so during 17 to 19, I got arrested several times.
Mm-hmm.
I was always with that guy.
Yeah.
His name is Carlos. But always with Carlos when I got arrested. It was just like, if he was picking me up anytime, I knew that I was taking a chance that I was going to go to jail that night.
Yeah.
Or like bad shit just happened.
Yeah. I'm nodding my head because this is like word for word. You could just be pulling my story out of my head. Because, yeah.
And I had never been with such a bad boy.
Yeah.
And it's beyond bad boy. Like, you know, bad boy, when I think of a bad boy these days, I'm like, it's a kid that is like, you know, a teenager that goes to parties and sleeps around or whatever. But this was like a whole nother level.
Yeah. This is
was
criminal.
Like, yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I had Miles, and I was done with drugs. I think part of the reason I wanted a family so badly was because I didn't grow up with a family.
One. Yeah.
And so I wanted Miles to have a family. So Carlos had gone to jail, and he got out, and we got back together one time.
Okay.
And I ended up getting arrested again.
Yeah.
So needless to say, that was the last time we were together.
Yeah.
And then I just really, all I did for many years was be a mom. And I loved it. It was great. I dated one guy before I met my husband, and he was great. You know, it just wasn't the right fit.
Yeah.
He loved Miles. Miles is like, he was the cutest, sweetest kid, and like, he was just easy to love. And then we met Matt, who's my husband now, and Matt ended up adopting Miles when he was 4 years old.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got a happy ending there.
Yeah.
So in my 20s, Matt and I would go out and drink occasionally.
Yeah.
It was never anything that we did. Like, I didn't keep wine in the house or beer. Or we would have New Year's Eve parties where people got drunk, but it wasn't like, it was definitely didn't seem like an addictive behavior.
Yeah.
And
it was normal drinking.
Yeah.
Quote unquote normal drinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we lived in McKinney during our 20s, and then in our 30s we moved to Granbury. Matt took a job out there. And we got really involved in select sports, and so we were super busy. Just like every weekend was like from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. We were doing baseball stuff. Both the kids were playing. I feel like I kind of sold my soul in all of that.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
All we were doing was taking the kids to baseball games and watching baseball games, and it was, honestly, I wasn't very happy doing that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of drinking that goes on in baseball tournaments, and then during the week I would come home and sometimes I would drink wine, sometimes I wouldn't. It wasn't a daily thing. The last year of my drinking, I still wasn't drinking every night, maybe 3 or 4 nights a week, so most nights. But when I was drinking, I was blacking out.
Yeah.
I was taking Xanax for anxiety, like prescription,
Yeah.
and then drinking and just getting so shit-faced
Yeah.
and doing really dumb things like beer-wise, I would be so embarrassed the next day
Yeah.
of how I acted the day before. It was definitely, like, I was present. I was there, but I wasn't there. You know what I mean? Like, I was totally content if I was just sitting in the living room watching TV, drinking wine by myself, and my boys and my husband were upstairs playing video games or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did for a long time. And we actually had a baseball tournament last summer in Panama City. And so the tournament was June of last year. And he just literally decided he wasn't going to drink anymore, and he hasn't. But even before that, he in our 20s would drink anytime we went out, and he had fun and would get drunk sometimes. But for probably the past 2 or 3 years before he like quit completely, he really was maybe drinking like once or twice a year because his workouts are really important to him.
Okay.
And I think he realized how bad it was for you before I realized. Yeah. Like, you can't unknow some things. And so towards after that, I did start reading a lot of quit lit books that explain what alcohol actually is, and like that it's ethanol and it's terrible for you. And my family does like really value nutrition and living a healthy lifestyle as far as our workouts and our meals go.
Yeah.
So it made sense that he wanted to cut out the alcohol, because it's like we're doing all this healthy stuff during the day, but why would we drink at night and totally make a waste of all the good we put in? And so I kept drinking until October 3rd is my sobriety date.
Okay. Of last year? Okay.
My son it was his homecoming, junior year homecoming, and me and one of the other moms was going to do a like after homecoming party that was going to be safe, where like the kids go where there's no alcohol or drugs and they can just hang out or whatever. So I don't know why, but I was picking up the vest to go with his tux in Fort Worth, and there happened to be a wine store over there. I was like, I'm just going to go in and grab some wine, and I ended up getting some vodka as well. And I just was drinking the day of homecoming. Like, I went and took pictures of the kids, and I was completely wasted. Not wasted, like falling over drunk or anything, or wasn't slurring my words yet. But I was definitely past buzzed, I'll say that.
Yeah.
And so did the pictures, went home, then went over to my friend's house where we were going to have this party for the kids, still was drinking, and she was like, eventually, before the kids got there, she was like, you're visibly drunk. You need to go home. And so that's bad enough as it is, but Miles is my family in general, but especially Miles, because he was my first, and Matt adopted Miles, so I have worked my ass off to just make sure that he has such a good life, and that to help him make good decisions.
Yeah.
And always make sure that he knows he's loved. And then I just knowing that I hurt him, because he did see me drunk that night. Luckily, his friends were not there yet. So I went home, and my friend ended up throwing the party herself. And I kept drinking when I got home. And I just drank until I passed out on my yoga mat. And then
the irony.
Yeah. And then I woke up. It was bad that happened, but I was so hard on myself. I was like not giving myself any grace. And there was like, in my heart and mind that night, there was no coming back from that.
Yeah.
And the next morning, so that was a Saturday night. The next morning I woke up on my yoga mat with an almost empty bottle of vodka and a empty bottle of wine. My husband had taken our younger son and his friend to church. So that made me feel even worse because they woke up and had seen me on my yoga mat. And I didn't commit suicide or anything like that, but there were definitely thoughts in my head of like, the world would be so much better without me.
Yeah.
Like they would be so much better off. And in my drunkenness, I reached out to some friends from church, and they came over a couple hours later and just kind of did an intervention with my husband and I, or with me and my husband about me. And so just, prayed with us and talked to us about what good options would be. And luckily I managed to not go to rehab. I was terrified of going to being away from my kids.
Yeah.
And I think rehab's great. And I think now that I'm sober, and I realize that 30 days is just 30 days. It's not forever. But at the time, it was just the worst thing that could possibly happen.
Oh, yeah.
So
you feel like it's the end of the world. You're like, what? You want to lock me up for 30 days?
Yeah.
No. Hell no.
Yeah. I can do this. I'll find a way.
I can do it on my own.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I logged on I was just scrolling on Instagram, and I found some sober accounts, and I was like, dang, there's a lot of people on here that are sober. Like, this is different than Facebook. Like, I hadn't been on Instagram that much prior to that. And so I connected with Megan from Soba Sisters, got on a sober circle call with them. And that was really the first time I had some hope, because I was like, there were women on there that were just like me, not just like me, but a lot like me, that had 6 months, 9 months, 2 years, 5 years sober. And I was like, okay, people are actually doing this. Because it doesn't feel like it feels like you're the only one.
Yeah, it does. And we were talking about this before we started recording, but especially, and I don't know about Granbury, but in Dallas, it's hard to be sober. Alcohol is everywhere. All of my friends drink. I'm the only one that doesn't drink.
Yeah.
And when you leave, you'll see on my wall over here that we have our family group, and it's like our friends, because we're all here. None of us have family here, so we're each other's family.
Yeah.
And with all of the guys and girls, I think there's 14 of us all together, and I'm the only one that doesn't drink.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it is for us too. We just, honestly, we don't go out that much anymore. We don't really have a lot of friends over. My friends are my sober friends now. Like, I always felt like I didn't really fit in anywhere. I even remember that as a memory from elementary school of just not feeling like I fit anywhere. But in sobriety, I've definitely found my people. And you could be my people, or it's just people that are willing to show their brokenness.
Yeah.
And
be real and honest and raw, and not have to put the mask on of like I have broken parts.
Yeah. Yeah, like there's nothing wrong with me, but we all have issues, and we should all be working through stuff. So, and I found that people in recovery know that they have to work on stuff.
Yeah.
And people that are not in recovery, not everybody, but a lot of them are not doing any kind of self-work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And there is like a fine line between normal drinking and unhealthy drinking. And a lot of people will ask me, like, well, do you just think alcohol's bad? And I'm like, well, I think it's bad for you. It has minimal health benefits. And that's only like red wine can help your heart. But it's really like less than a glass of wine a week. Like, it's a tiny amount that you should be drinking if that's what you're doing it for. But there's so many other things that you could do for your heart that are way better for your heart than have a glass of wine. I feel like society just uses that as a justification for drinking a glass of wine every night.
Absolutely. I think that's probably where mommy wine culture stems.
Oh, yeah.
Is that, well, the doctor says I should do it for my heart, or I've heard that it's good for my heart. And I mean, we live our generation, especially our generation, is especially into health and nutrition and fitness. And so if a doctor says wine's good for you, then they're going to, it's just.
We run with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did for years. But the sad part about that is that we're sending a message to our kids that they're stressing us out so much that we have to drink at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And kids, I mean, I didn't realize this when I was drinking, but having a mom that's drunk is scary when you're little.
Yeah.
And I mean, me and every single one of my friends, we were all getting trashed all the time. I mean, from the time our kids were little.
Yeah.
And I just didn't realize how unsafe that makes kids feel.
Yeah, it really does. I grew up with a mom. I grew up with an entire family who drank. Like I told you, after my dad died, I went to live with my mom, and her family, like, it's normal. Like, I have uncles that get up and the first thing they do is go for a beer. Mm-hmm. But also the other side of that is, like, when we get together, it's a party.
Yeah.
And everybody drinks, and it's a shit show.
Yeah.
It's not now that they're older, now that my aunts and uncles are older, like, they're a lot more chill.
Yeah.
But when we were kids, it was, like, dancing and screaming and laughing, and a fight might break out.
Right.
It might not. Like, it was a lot of not knowing as a kid.
Yeah.
Like, I never knew where I was going to sleep. I never knew, like, are we staying here all night? Are we driving home? I never really thought about the fact that someone was going to drive me home drunk.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what was happening.
Yeah.
It was like, who is the least drunk
mm-hmm.
to drive us home?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, like, laying in my bed crying at night because my dad died when I was 8. And then my mom started partying, and she would go out to the club. Like, they'd party at the house and drink at the barbecue or whatever. And then they would get ready and go out to the bar, the club, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I remember, like, laying in bed crying, thinking that my mom was going to die and never come home because my dad died. Mm-hmm. So in my, like, traumatized, grieving brain, mom's gonna die. Something else bad is gonna happen, and
who's gonna take care of you?
Yes, who's gonna take care of me? And I would just cry and pray and cry and pray. And yeah, so when I, like, started drinking a lot, that's what came to mind. Mm-hmm. Was like, oh my God, I'm doing exactly what my mom did to me to my daughter. Like, I can't do this. I can't have her terrified at night that we're gonna die just because we went out for drinks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that kind of makes me think of communities. I know my community, and, like, a lot of, even when we lived in McKinney, the people we hung out with, I feel like there's, like, people all over the place feel like we're in a bubble. Mm-hmm. And, like, we all know that bad things happen to people, but people don't realize that those people are in this bubble with us.
Yeah.
Like, and they might be that person, you know what I mean? Because as it turns out, I was that person. Yeah. You know, like, I was the one that ended up with having this drinking problem. And, you know, I think it's really disheartening that we have this stigma around alcohol, and just because someone decides that they're going to be sober, like, one of the girls I was talking to this morning, she literally drank once every couple months. Mm-hmm. And when she did drink, she would black out. And so she's sober now. But there's this stigma that if you're sober, like, you must have gone to jail, or you must have, something horrible must have happened. Yeah. And it's not always, like, my story is I got drunk at a party before my kid's homecoming.
Yeah. And passed out on your yoga mat, safe in your own home.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not like, that's the thing with addiction. It's, like, all over the spectrum. And yes, some people that drink end up sleeping under a bridge. Yeah. And some people don't, but there's nothing that separates me from that person, really, other than a couple drinks. Mm-hmm. You know, I could have easily lost my family and lost my home and my car if I kept drinking. Yeah. So if there's a message I have for people, it's just that that alcoholism or any kind of addiction does not discriminate. And none of us are different. Like, alcohol itself is addicting. And it literally, if you drink long enough, you will build up a tolerance and your body will want more and more. And eventually people do become dependent on it, even if they don't realize it. But most people will probably drink the rest of their lives. Yeah. And I think the difference is like the way for the people that do get sober without having any kind of legal reason to make them stop, it's how we feel the next day.
Yeah.
It's like the anxiety and the depression and the guilt, because some of us are just feelers. Yeah. I'm a feeler, and like I could not stand that I felt so anxious the next day, and I had so much regret over doing something stupid the night before.
Yeah, that was me. I would feel it. Like, I don't know. I feel like my husband still drinks, and I feel like he does something stupid and he just like doesn't care. Like, he's just like, cool, whatever, let's move on. And that's not how I was. Like, I did something stupid and I harped on it and beat myself up about it for weeks. Like, I would have panic nightmares and like wake up like hyperventilating because I remembered something that I did when I was drunk.
Yeah. Every morning I was waking up, like, checking my phone for texts. Like, what did I say to that person? Or what did I do? And what kind of fights did I get in with my husband? Or how much did I actually drink? Or just, I mean, it was insanity. So that all brought me to, when I did quit, I told you I hooked up with Soba Sisters. And really that was my main support group for the first couple months. And then I joined Sober Buddy. And I started teaching yoga prior to getting sober. So I feel like my recovery journey kind of started about a year before I actually got sober. Because I started entertaining the idea of maybe alcohol isn't good for me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when I read, my favorite Quit Lit book is by Laura McCowan, but I did read Annie Grace's book, The Naked Mind, I believe it is.
Oh, yeah.
And it tells you a lot of the science behind what alcohol actually is. And so after I read that, it was just like engraved in my mind. I was like, you're drinking ethanol right now. Like, it's basically what people put in their cars for gasoline, and like, there's really nothing good about this. Like, you're poisoning your body. So got involved in Sober Buddy after Soba Sisters. And then I started a sober yoga group in Granbury. So I've been doing that in a studio, and I'm actually going to be going to work for another studio now, but I'm going to move those classes to an online or to a Zoom platform.
Yeah.
Just like it's just a free offering.
Yeah. That'll be cool. You'll have to share the link so that we can get it out there.
Yeah, I will. When I have the link, I will definitely share that with you. And so I do lead some sober calls for Soba Sisters and for Sober Buddy. I'm actually getting my recovery coach certification, holistic health coach certification, and then just helping my friend Cindy from Sober in Dallas run the Sober City movement for Dallas. Yeah. Having a lot of fun with that. Yeah. I mean, the meetups that's when I say I've met my people. Like, all these groups are my people. Yeah.
Yeah. What is Soba Sisters?
Soba Sisters is obviously it's a group of women who are either sober or sober curious, and we do Zoom calls several times a week. There are some retreats, like international retreats, that Megan does. Like, she just went to Bali with a group of the women from Soba Sisters, and so she has a couple of those going on. So that's definitely a great place to get started and really stay involved in. Yeah. So I lead some of Saturday night meetings for her, and then occasionally lead meetings on Sober Buddy. And then really my passion has become sober yoga retreats. Yeah. Just hosting either weekend retreats that are fairly local, like Broken Bow. Because there are a lot of people doing international retreats right now, but not as many doing domestic stuff. Yeah. So it's nice for people to just be able to drive 3 or 4 hours to do a 3-day retreat where they don't have to take off work or anything.
Right. Well, and that's something that I was starting to look into trying to do,
Mm-hmm.
and doing not just yoga, but having yoga be a part of it, because I think yoga is amazing.
Yeah.
It's good for your mind. It's good for your body.
Yeah.
I love yoga. But having like a weekend that's not too far away that people can just go to, because I feel like there's a huge section of our society that just needs a chance to focus and reset, because we go, and it's not until we're asleep, drunk, passed out on our yoga mat
Yeah.
that we realize something needs to change. And for other people, it's that true hard rock bottom of like almost losing everything or losing everything. And it shouldn't have to get that far.
Yeah,
for
definitely.
us to like see that there's another way and go another way.
Absolutely. I heard someone say recently, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And I just think that is so powerful, because in every stage of my life, I could show you my friends and I would show you what my future was at the time, or what was going to be in the near future. So now, I mean, I just find it so important to surround myself with people that have, not necessarily everybody that's sober, but I prefer for a lot of them to be sober. And just that have some goals and are doing some work on themselves, and don't want to just stay right where they're at.
Right. Who want to do more than sit on the couch every night and watch Netflix.
Yeah.
That's what my husband and I do a lot of on the weekdays. But on the weekend, I'm doing stuff like we did today. You know, we did yoga in the park. I have a dinner with friends tonight. Like that's, I'm right there with you. Like I need to surround myself with people who are not just happy with the status quo. Like you're doing retreats. You're trying to help others get sober. Like, yeah, it's important to surround yourself with people who are growth minded.
Absolutely. And it's really easy to stop being growth minded. I mean, when you feel like you've worked all of your life to get the house and get the car and get the job, and then you get all these things and you're like, wow, I thought I would be happy.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh my God, like you can buy all the shit in the world and still not be happy.
Yeah.
And that's what I found. Like I have gotten all of the things. I mean, I have a great family, a fantastic husband that I know loves me with all his heart, and wonderful kids that get good grades, and I have the house I've always dreamed of, and I have a nice, like the things are great, and I thought the things would make me happy, but what I've found is like what makes me happy is going inward and letting myself feel the feelings, and so that I can work through all my past trauma and feel true joy in my soul.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's important. Like, I got sober when I was 20, but didn't do the work on past traumas and actually trying to figure out what drove me to do drugs to begin with. And it wasn't until years later that I started to heal. So I was engaged before my husband, and he passed away. My first fiance passed away. He it was an accidental overdose on a really potent opiate and over-the-counter cough and cold medicine.
Oh my goodness.
And so he had a problem though with opiates. And at the time, I was getting my bachelor's degree in community, family, and addiction services, with the plan to be an LCDC. Like that was the plan. And he died, like overdose, going into my junior year of college. And I beat myself up about it. I was like, how the hell did I miss the fact that his pill use was a problem? Because I knew he would take the pills like when we would go to the movies. But to me, it was like, it was normal, like, young adult
Yeah.
drug use.
Yeah.
If that is
It felt
even
normal.
a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was so not your fault.
Yeah.
But I get it. Because we always blame ourselves.
We do. And I was like, how the hell did I miss
And you
this?
want to know why?
Yeah.
And this isn't ugly. It's because we are selfish.
Yeah.
People are selfish. And we think it's all about us.
Yeah.
But the truth is, he had a problem. And
Yeah.
you were not the problem.
Yeah. And it took a lot of therapy for me to get to that and to actually start to uncover like why I did drugs, because it was because I wanted to know what drove him to that. And so I started doing the work on myself, but I didn't finish. Like I stopped and I seriously for years, I spent yesterday was the anniversary of me getting my bachelor's degree, and it wasn't until this past year that 2021, that I actually went back and started to allow myself to work with addicts again.
So are you a therapist?
No, I'm a recovery coach.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
When
thought
you
you were a
said
recovery
that,
coach, but I didn't know if you ended up getting your LCDC or no.
No, I didn't. I applied for it. I got the intern. So I'm technically an LCDCI in the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation system, but I never did the hours to, like the internship hours.
Yeah.
Because I was a single mom. I always say it's because I was a single mom and I couldn't afford it. I really now know that it was because I had guilt of my first fiance dying.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like I deserved to work with people dealing with addiction because I had missed his addiction.
Isn't that interesting how we like come up with our subconscious? Like it's not even your fault that your subconscious like led you to believe that, but somewhere along the line you started believing that, and it's just another lie we tell ourselves.
Yeah, and that's what I tell people now. I'm like, I am educated in addiction and recovery. Like, I have 2 degrees that focused specifically on that. Like, I've done the coaching certification for addiction coaching. Like, I know this stuff, and yet I believed it for years that it was my fault, that I missed it, that I was inadequate, that I had done something wrong.
Yeah.
And I should know better.
Yeah. It's different when it's yourself, though.
Yeah.
And it's your personal life. I think I probably would have felt the same way you did.
Yeah.
And my best friend since childhood, Sarah, we've been best friends since we were 8. Her husband committed suicide 4 or 5 years ago. And I mean, I think there were times for her where she was like, I wish I had done this different, but you know what, there's just no way these people make these choices, and it's extremely sad.
Yeah.
And it's very scary as a parent, especially all of the suicide going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
There were years, especially when I was drinking, that every time my kids would get in trouble, I would be so scared that they were going to run upstairs and like commit suicide over something stupid.
Yeah.
And because you hear about it all the time, it's just rampant.
Yeah.
That it didn't happen that much when we were kids.
No, it really didn't. I mean, my best friend died by suicide we were in high school. Her and I had been best friends in elementary school, and then through junior high, like we went to different junior highs, but we stayed close. And then in high school, she got a boyfriend, I got a boyfriend. I moved to another town, and so we didn't really see each other. I saw her at the fair one year. The next year, during fair season again, I missed a phone call from her and tried to call her back the next day. Well, that was the day she killed herself. And it was the hardest thing, but it was, like you were saying, it was rare. Like, that wasn't the norm.
Right.
Kids didn't just kill themselves back then. Now it's everywhere.
Yeah. There was a kid at my son's high school that committed suicide, and he wasn't friends with the person, but I read about it on an email or something, and I asked him what happened. He was like, I think she committed suicide. And I'm like, it's just such a casual conversation for kids these days.
Yeah, it's scary. Is fentanyl a big deal at y'all's school?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, we've had a lot of kids.
Is that like a drug that they use for entertainment, or?
No, they've all been kind of accidental overdoses.
It's
like,
put into other drugs.
into the weed
Mm-hmm.
a lot. And a few times it's been that they thought they were taking like an Oxycontin or a hydrocodone or something, and it was actually a fake, the like fentanyl, whatever, mixed with whatever the other thing is. I can't think right now.
Yeah, I have no idea. I've heard of the fentanyl, and somebody close to Granbury overdosed on it.
Yeah.
But that's the only case I know of.
Yeah, it's
so far.
gotten really bad over here, and I constantly, my poor daughter, I sent her a thing the other day, and it was like, I'm never having sex again. My mom traumatized me, and I was like, me with you about drugs and alcohol.
Right?
She has like facts.
That's a powerful lesson though for our kids. I'm so grateful that I didn't take my addiction to the grave. You know what I mean? So many people do go their whole lives in active addiction, or maybe we can call it addiction or not call it addiction, but not happy because of the level of drinking. And then, it's just passed down from generation to generation. When our kids have seen us get sober, it's like, okay, that substance clearly is addictive.
Yeah.
And maybe I should be careful if I do try it, or, at least it's a thought in their head. And if they do formulate a problem, they know that they can, there's a way out.
Yeah.
They're not just stuck.
Yeah.
And they know somebody that's been through it, so they can
made it to the other side. Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely, and you have a 16-year-old too, so it is scary. But I feel like because of what we've been through, our teenagers are probably so much more aware.
Yeah.
And Miles is like the complete opposite of me when I was a teenager. He's definitely like he's an overachiever, and he is totally against drugs and alcohol. Yeah. When I was like balls to the wall, give me whatever you got, because I wanted to try.
Same here, and that's how my daughter is too. She's very driven. She's very and I always tell her, I'm like, it's because I found out I was pregnant in June. In August, I went back to school and immediately started studying psychology, addiction, all that stuff. So I always tell her, I'm like, you've been listening to addiction and recovery literature since you were in the womb.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
But I think it makes a difference when you talk to your kids about addiction too, and about substance use and how it can escalate really quickly, because my daughter has a friend, and her dad is in recovery, but her parents never talked to her about it. They never explained it to her, because it is hereditary. It's genetic. You're more susceptible if your family has struggled with it. And that poor girl, I just found out has been in trouble with the law. Mind you, my daughter is a sophomore. Yeah. This girl is too. And what started out as casual experimenting with vaping, then weed, and then acid, and now she's in trouble with the law. And I'm no different than her dad. I'm in recovery too. I did drugs too, but I think the difference is that I've always been open and honest with my daughter, talked to her about it, at an age appropriate time.
Yeah, there has to be a conversation. Yeah. It's like, you are maybe not like your best friend who, if they try something, you may get addicted a lot faster. And you genetically have, my oldest son has a biological mom, me, and his biological dad, and that both had an addiction problem. So it's double bad. Yeah. And I think that's a very important conversation that we have to have with our kids. Yeah. Or not, we don't have to, but we definitely should.
We should, because if they don't know, they can't protect themselves.
I think it's just as important as having the sex talk, really. Yeah. If not more important, because they're going to have sex. Yeah. I mean, that's what people do.
That's what they do. Yeah. I know. That's what I told my daughter when, we were talking about it. I was like, look, this is not an emotional conversation. Yes, sex is emotional, but right now it's biological. Like, we need to talk about the biology of sex.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I talk to her the same way about addiction. I'm like, hey, when you're in college and your brain is fully developed, if you want to try something, by all means.
Yeah.
But until your brain is fully developed, don't do drugs. Like,
absolutely.
You're more likely to become a lifelong addict if you start using drugs in high school, as a teenager, as an adolescent, like, because your brain hasn't finished developing yet.
Yeah. And I think my personal belief is that God will always use our hard times and turn them into good things, and that there's purpose in our pain. And so, even though it sucks that we went through this addiction, or that our kids saw a little bit of it or whatever, it's also such a blessing that they did see that. And so they're like, shit, I don't want to have to go through what my mom went through. That sucked.
Yeah.
But she made it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my daughter. She's like, yeah, I don't like drunk people.
Yeah. My oldest son says that too. My youngest son, he's 11.
Yeah.
So he's very curious. And my in-laws still drink, and so I think he doesn't know if it's abnormal that we don't drink, or or abnormal that they do drink, like, it's just confusing. Because he's like, at 11, I don't think you fully understand that some people are just wired differently.
Yeah.
And on that same token, I think that alcohol's bad for everybody.
It is. It's a toxin. Period.
Yeah.
It does not, like we were saying at the very beginning of the call, there are no health benefits.
Right. Yeah, the doctors used to say that it was good for your heart if you have like 2 glasses of wine 5 days a week, or 7, whatever it is. But now I think the latest research is showing no alcohol, because like the drug and alcohol screenings that family practices will ask, basically the test shows that if a woman has more than like 3 drinks a week, then she's considered to have alcohol use disorder. And if a man has had more than 5 to 7, then and most people that drink have more than 2 in a sitting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, because it's addicting to everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, some of us may have more addicting personalities. I'm not denying that.
Yeah.
100%, a million times over. I know that I have a more addictive personality than some people, but alcohol itself is addicting for everybody. And so
it's just the chemistry of the brain. It increases X, your brain likes it, and it wants more of it. Like, it's just the science behind it.
Yeah. So I think what would be most beneficial, and I haven't really thought about, I don't know if it's going to come from me, but what needs to get out into the world more is the science behind it. Because we do live in a fairly healthy culture, as far as we want to work out, we want to look good, feel good, eat good foods, do the workouts. So I think if more people knew the science behind what alcohol actually is, because all those years when I was drinking, I didn't realize alcohol was ethanol.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a common sense thing. I easily could have.
Ethanol.
Yeah, but you choose not to think about what you don't want to know.
Yeah.
But if more people knew it, they can't unknow that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's what needs to get out there. And yeah, I always I speak a lot on the addiction side and like substance use disorder, and how it's a disease and the science behind that, and how most people can't just like turn it off. Like, it's not a willpower thing. It's a chemistry thing. Like, you've got to just change the chemistry, change the neural pathways in your brain and how they automatically respond to certain things. But the other side of that is like you're saying, educate people on the science behind what alcohol does to your body to begin with. And maybe more people would be like your husband and just be like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
Is me and my husband are a perfect example of someone who could just, all right, not going to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I needed a support group.
Yeah.
A sober circle connection with other women has been everything for me. And that was, like, I had tried to go to AA meetings. I don't consider myself an alcoholic. Maybe I am, but I just consider myself sober, maybe have alcohol use disorder.
Mm-hmm.
But I think every person in sobriety has the right to call themselves whatever they want to call themselves. Yeah. And I feel like we're healing.
Mm-hmm.
I also don't think I'm ever going to get to a point where I could have a drink one day, nor do I want to. But my point is just by sitting in an AA meeting every day saying, hi, I'm Amanda, I'm an alcoholic, it's just doesn't sound good to me.
And I think that's, everyone has their own journey, just like you're saying, like, AA was never for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was court mandated because I got in trouble.
Yeah.
And so I had to go, when I first got sober from meth, like that was required. So I tried NA, I tried AA.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't for me. For some people, it is their saving grace. And it gets them sober and it keeps them sober.
Yeah.
It just wasn't my thing. And that was actually going to be one of my questions was like, what helped you get sober? And you've kind of touched on it, but there are other options. And I don't think people know that.
Mm-hmm. So Soba Sisters was basically I consider AA to be a sober circle.
Yeah.
Just like my sober yoga, I consider that to be a sober circle. Soba Sisters is definitely a sober circle. I also participate in the mindful life practice, which Alex is the leader of that group. She does a lot of yoga teacher trainings and she hosts yoga retreats in Bali. So I do a lot of her Zoom call. All of my sober circles, most of them at least, are on Zoom, which is really cool. Yeah. I mean, I do meetings like twice a day. Every day, pretty Monday through Friday, I meet twice a day, and then once on Saturdays. And it's not because I feel like I want to use it. I need to do it. It's because these are my people.
You're hanging out with your friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How lame, right? I never thought like I would be hanging out with my friends on Zoom, but that's the world we live in.
It's the world we live in. Thank God for COVID. I think that was one good thing that came out of COVID was the ability to socialize away from your hometown, like getting to know people outside of your immediate circle.
Yeah. So, Soba Sisters, Mindful Life Practice, Sober Buddy, and Sober City Movement.
Okay.
Sober City Movement is the group of girls that we did the yoga class with this morning.
Okay.
So we meet up. We try to plan one sober curious event every month, and sometimes that is one of our retreats, but most of them that we schedule are free events to the public, unless you want to do like the food trucks after. You would need to buy your own food, obviously, but that's just something cool that people can come to. Not everybody coming into sobriety has money to go spend on a lot of stuff, so we try to plan things that are not expensive for people. So Clyde Warren Park was a perfect get-together. Next month, we're going to do, I believe it's on June 9th. It's a Friday night. We're going to go to an event for artists in recovery.
Oh.
I'll send you some information on that.
Yes.
So it's here in Dallas. And then the following month, we're planning to go to that new sober bar that just opened up in Richardson.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah,
I've been wanting one here. Cause I think Austin is the closest one, and it's Sands Bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you go to the Sands Bar here in Dallas?
No, I didn't.
So I went to that, and I met the people that are opening this Richardson alcohol-free bar. And so I don't know what all they're gonna serve mocktails, and then they'll have like the alcohol-free wines and spritzers and all kinds of stuff. So it's really cool.
Yes.
Like I've heard of these places going up all over the United States, random places.
It's
but
getting really popular.
Because I told the girls today, I was like, I want to go like for a meetup at some point. Like I'd like to go out with the sober group of girls, because it's, just like you and me and other women just like us that still want to go do fun stuff. but in a safe environment.
Yeah. Yeah, because it is like it's getting scarier.
Mm-hmm.
My husband and I went out to Deep Ellum with some friends, and we went to Electric Shuffle. And leaving, we love Deep Ellum,
Mm-hmm.
love it. But we were leaving, and I was like, okay, I've never been scared in Dallas before, and it was like drunk people everywhere. It's like a fight's gonna break out, someone's gonna bust out a knife or a gun. Like, you don't have to worry about that with sober people.
Yeah. That reminds me of my family is going to Cabo in July for our family vacation. And the reason this reminded me of that is just planning for what's going to, like, you don't want to put yourself in a bad situation.
Yeah.
So last year we went to Mexico, and it was January of last year. And it was like a drunk fest the whole time. But we stayed at an all-inclusive resort. And so for me, it's all about getting to do all the same things I used to do.
Yeah.
Just minus the alcohol, which sounds like what you're doing.
That's my
So
life
now
exactly.
on trips, we're leaving out the all-inclusive. We're doing like VRB. We still go to Cabo, staying in a VRBO, so we won't have to be around drunk people. We'll go to bed early. You're not like 8 o'clock or anything, but like we would at home, 10 o'clock. We'll be on adventures all day, actually spending quality time with our family.
Yeah.
Whereas if we were taking the boys to an all-inclusive resort and I was drinking, I mean, I would 100% be laying on a beach chair drinking all day.
Not doing excursions.
And that is not fun it's not even fun for me.
Yeah.
Like drinking alcohol is only fun for like an hour.
Yeah.
And then it's like
you feel like crap. You get the spins.
You're tired.
You're nauseous. Mm-hmm. You don't want to do it. Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm to be such I'm a person that's so into nutrition and health. It's shocking that it took so many years to realize that was the one thing that was like holding me back.
Yeah.
It was like I had to let go of one thing, and then everything else would fall into place.
Yeah.
And that's literally what happened.
So how has your life been different pre-sobriety and now?
So on the outside looking in, my life looked very normal. Mm-hmm. And even though I was drinking, we were still happy, like as a family. It was just, the nights when I chose to drink, I would do things I wasn't proud of. Mm-hmm. After stopping, I can tell you I am a lot less anxious. Therefore, my older son has a lot more freedom in a healthy way. Yeah. Like, I'm not terrified that something bad's going to happen all the time. Yeah. He trusts me. He talks to me about all kinds of stuff. Yeah. Stuff I don't even want to hear sometimes,
That's what I say. My daughter will tell me things, and I'm like, TMI.
Yeah.
I don't need to know that.
But it's such a gift after going a couple years into his teenage years where I felt like he hated my drinking. Yeah. Hated it. And I did not know that. So we went from, we were like peanut butter and jelly most of his life. And then when I started drinking heavily, he really pulled away from me. Mm-hmm. And then now our relationship is just like it's so solid. And other than his friends, I know that I'm his favorite person in the whole world, for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And then my younger son, basically the same thing. I was obnoxious sometimes when I was drinking. Mm-hmm. And so I think they would hold stuff back from me because they didn't want me to go blab about it. And so, I'm just much more mindful of those type of things. Mm-hmm. My marriage is much better because he hated when I was drinking because I was just an annoying drunk that always cried at the end of the night.
Yes. Yeah.
So my family is just in general so much better, and we just make choices based around what's best for our family and not what's best for an individual.
Right. Yeah.
And so that gives me a lot of freedom to go, and I don't do it very often, maybe once or twice a month. I'll go meet up with a group of girls, which my family doesn't question anymore. They're not like, oh shit, mom's going to get drunk.
Yeah.
It's going to be one of those nights. We're going to have to go drive and pick her up or any of that. Like, they just don't worry about me anymore, which is...
Doesn't that feel great?
Yeah, it's like I can be... I've noticed that lately. Like, I went to watch live music a few weeks ago with a friend, And used to, when I would go watch live music with this friend at this place, my family would be like, oh shit, here we go again.
Here we go again.
But they were like, okay, see you later. And it just felt good to be, I mean, I'm 36 years old. For Christ's sake, I should be trusted, you know, but you have to earn that. Mm-hmm. And if you constantly are doing the same stupid activity over and over, then people stop trusting.
Yeah. It's just like when you were doing drugs, and I don't know if you dealt with this, but when I was doing drugs, I'd be like, oh, this time's going to be different. You know, I'm going to slow down, or I'm going to quit, or whatever. And then there I was, letting everybody else down again, and right back at it.
Yeah. And the sad thing is, like, I think we believed what we were saying.
Yeah.
We meant it. Like, in our heart, that's what we wanted to do. But when it came down to it, it was like, gonna do it anyways.
Yeah.
So other than family life, I don't have the anxiety. I'm not an anxious person anymore. I mean, I have anxiety sometimes, natural human anxiety, but I don't spend my days just in a panic, which I felt a lot. And then I've really just thrown myself completely into sobriety, like all things alcohol free. Like that's kind of become, it's just who I am. I'm one of those people, like I'm all or nothing. When I was drinking, you know, hardcore. And now that I'm sober, I'm like all in. I'm like, everybody should get sober.
Yeah, I know.
And
it's hard to see other people drinking, and you're like, there's something so much better.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I'm doing the sober coach training, the holistic health coach training. I'm actually doing another yoga teacher certification through the Mindful Life Practice, which is geared towards sober circles. Mm-hmm. So that's been really good. And what else am I doing? I've been leading that sober yoga. Mm-hmm. And then just leading a couple of those sober circles for a few different communities. So it's been good.
Yeah.
I feel really good about it. It's crazy. I've been sober for 8 months, and I feel like I was like, you should probably wait till you're sober for like a year before you start like going all in. And I'm like, why?
Why? Yeah.
That is how we stay sober. Yeah. Kind of, you know, like, yes, I could stay sober and not be doing all this extra stuff, but like I'm having the time of my life.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
It is a blast to like hang out with people who get you, to help other people get to where you are, and just be living life.
Yeah.
Like I try to tell people, like, it's just so much better sober. Like it is. I remember concerts. I can get up and go wherever the hell I want, whenever I want, without fear of like, oh, I might get a ticket. Oh, I probably shouldn't be driving right now. Like, oh, I've got to wait for my Uber. Now, if I'm waiting on an Uber, it's because I want to.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. And to know you can just drive anywhere, drive yourself home anytime. Trust yourself.
Yeah. And if my daughter is at a party and decides to drink and needs a ride home,
you're always sober.
I can leave on a moment's notice. Like,
I think about that too. About if Miles, and I make it very clear, like, I will not, we won't even talk about it that night. Just call me. Don't drink and drive. We'll figure it out later. You know, you're a teenager. You're going to do stupid shit. Yeah. I don't expect you to be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. I have that same conversation with my daughter. And there have been times when she's like, can we give so-and-so a ride home from the party? And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And then they're like, well, you know their parents. I'm like, I don't care. Like, I just want you guys to be safe. I want everyone to get home safe. And I don't want anybody to die tonight. I don't care about anything else except everyone getting home to their parents.
Yeah.
Because no parent should get that phone call.
Yeah. And sadly, most of those parents have probably had drinks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hate to judge. And I'm not judging everyone for sure. Or anyone really, because I was right there in the middle of them. But I know from my life that most of the kids' parties that I go to, like even birthday parties from when kids were little, there was drinking.
Yeah.
And then parents driving kids home.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, we usually, our friend group, like, our kids' parties are at places that sell beer and wine and, you know, have a bar for a reason. Like, that's just the way it is.
It's like a party for the parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so last question.
Okay.
All right, so if you could tell a mom like you anything, what would you tell her? Someone who's still drinking and maybe on the fence.
I would just say, you know, you hear we would all die for our kids, but, you know, I think what our kids really want is for us to live and have adventure and be of sober mind so that we can help them navigate their teenage years and their childhood. And I know it hurts to hear it, but, you know, kids are scared when they have a parent that's not sober. And those were my kids too. So definitely no judgment. There's millions of women out there that are curious about getting sober. So that's my advice, is just to start living instead of just saying that you would be willing to give your life. Truly start living for your kids.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's so true.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here.
Of course.
I have had so much fun.
Yes, I have too. I was like, I would totally come back again.
Yes.
This was really cool.
I know. Every single person, we've ended up scheduling like a follow-up to do a second one because it's just been so much fun.
Yeah.